Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I always have to start my webinars out that way, you guys. I need a little more laughter. Come on, a little more laughter. There's no laughter, there's silence.
I laughed.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I don't count, is what you're saying. I don't count.
I thought.
All right,
Maybe your microphone
I'm laughing
was off there.
That's it. I'm done.
I'm laughing on
Exactly.
the inside. On the
Right.
inside where it counts.
Everybody's here. Everybody's here. We're doing good. I would like to welcome everybody here to our event today. We're going to talk about how to avoid litigation for you and your clients, as well as some ways to close more deals. And certainly is a very hot topic. Litigation is certainly something that we don't want to have to address in our businesses. And I've got two fine people here with me. First and foremost, I'm going to have each of them do their own introductions here, but I have Amelia. We'll start out with you, Amelia.
Hello, Amelia Perro, Director Channel at Kaseya ID Agents. Pick your product. I've been doing these with you, Dan, for a while now. I'm thrilled to be back and bringing a really engaging speaker and some very timely topic today. So thrilled to be here.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I think we've been working together now probably 4 years, maybe.
Yes.
Somewhere in that ballpark. Time flies when we're having fun, right?
Yesterday.
And then we also have Mr. Bradley Gross.
You also have me. I'm here.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Tell us about yourself, Brad.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Brad Gross. I have a self-titled law firm in that name, and I have been counseling MSPs and service providers and VARs and OEMs for upwards of 20 years. I have a TRS-80 Model 1 Level 2 sitting 5 feet behind the camera.
That's awesome.
If there's enough demand, I'll swing that camera around so you can see it. It still works. But I have been sort of at the forefront of these MSP issues for literally 2 decades. So good to be here. Looking forward to chatting about all things security.
I like to refer to you when I talk to people about you as the attorney, not attorney to the stars, but attorney to the MSPs. You are the man.
Thank you.
You are the go-to. So your name is definitely bounced around in our community in good ways.
In good ways.
Quite a bit. Yeah.
It's bounced around, but we're not going to talk about that now.
Right, exactly.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's a webinar for another day.
Right. A whole different PowerPoint.
Exactly.
Different PowerPoint.
I've been in the industry for, why don't I just say too long? I remember way back in the early days in 2000, when I started doing managed services, 2006, 2007, putting together master services agreement and thinking about all the legalities, thinking about, my company is the IT department for the clients that I'm bringing on board. And as in early MSP in 2006, that scared the hell out of me, thinking about all the different possible ramifications. And a lot of times you think, things get better, but things get worse because we have more regulatory compliance. We've got cybersecurity, we've got cyber insurance. We have so much that we're responsible for. It's an incredible amount of liability that we all have as MSP business owners. And I think a lot of times, and Brad, Amelia, correct me if I'm wrong or if you have different thoughts, is MSPs underestimate the amount of liability that's on our shoulders for the businesses that we're running because of all the other companies that we have underneath us that are counting on us in depending on us to keep them safe and secure. Do you have any thoughts in that area?
The problem is that there's absolutely no room for error, right? Not from employees or business owners, managers, or those of us that support their technology systems. And so MSPs have to be more diligent than ever to reduce their own liabilities as well as clients. So, look, at the end of the day, there's no MSP, no security solution that can eliminate every single risk, right? There's no magic pill.
Mhm.
So what's really important now, and why we're all here today, is to talk about, the things that MSPs can do, the steps they can take to minimize their exposure. And like the story that you mentioned, Dan, I remember, so, I came from the MSP space, and one of the things that we had on our website was, we'll handle your IT so you can focus on the business. And that basically, and I'm sure, Brad, you're going to cringe, but it's like blanket liability, right?
I'm already smiling. See the smile?
We're responsible for all of it, right? That was our big, and that was a big marketing message for a lot of MSPs. And then what was the MSP that got sued because that was on their, was it in Volta?
Mhm.
Who it was, right? And they
Yep.
got sued by a client because there was a cyber incident and there was other factors. They, I think that they were saying that the MSP didn't do a QBR, didn't provide antivirus, all of these things, but they also said on their website, they made that blanket claim.
That's right.
So there's, continuing with the education and really changing even some of the small things like that, the messaging on the website can make a huge impact.
Right.
I agree. So I think that when you're looking at this issue, you can approach it from two different angles. You get to the same point, but two different angles. The first angle is from the MSP angle. What kind of liability does the MSP have when they make statements like Dan made on his website, or any other? You're not alone. A lot of websites do what you just said. What kind of liability are they taking on from what they're saying they can do? What kind of liability are they taking on by holding a trusted position with their client, right? So even if they don't say it, is there an implication that we're going to take care of you because that's what we do? So what kind of liabilities are you taking on in that way, right? And what kind of solutions should you be offering, including security awareness training, to minimize all of that? That's from the MSP angle. Now, from the customer angle, I understand that MSPs often have difficulty selling some of these services. And I think it's because the customers themselves look at it as a pure cost center, right? It's not a profit-making thing when you have, an alarm on your house doesn't improve the look of your house. It's a thing you need. Well, as a result of it being a pure cost center, customers don't demand it. So MSPs aren't pushing it or they're not selling it correctly. And that's exposing the customers themselves to liability. And until they understand that, they might not demand it of MSPs, and MSPs aren't going to sell it. So it's sort of a circular thing. MSPs don't understand the liabilities they have. Customers aren't really understanding the liabilities they have. And there's a miscommunication there. And I think that we can clear that up today in this webinar, talking about these kinds of services, and we'll see where things go.
Well, and I can't remember who brought this up, and it might have been both of you, but a lot of times when you take a look at sales versus operations, there's a difference between the two, right? Because sales is out there selling the world, saying that we can do A, B, C, D, and E, right? But then operations, those two have to match. But let's take that a step further. There's one concern when you have some discrepancies between sales and operations, but then you have sales versus the legal aspect of it, right? Mm-hmm. Because, there's one thing about talking about, well, can you deliver what you're selling? But then there's are you going to be liable for what you're selling, right? In what you're preaching, in what you're saying you can do, because in the sales process, we want to talk to them about everything we can do. And we're client focused, maybe to an error that, we got your back, we got to take care of. And we're putting ourselves in a very difficult position.
Yeah, salespeople often put their organizations into a lot of peril. In their zeal to get the job done, they make offers and promises that they can't make. They imply things that they shouldn't be implying. From my perspective, if we're going to start to take positions here and say, what should a company be doing? From my perspective, any company And that isn't offering any MSP that isn't offering a complete and full security stack, including solutions like security awareness training, is really not only missing the boat financially, but probably wading into waters that they might find are over their head at some point. Look, if you're an MSP, all right, think about, let's go back to your example earlier about the website. What does your website say? All right. Does it tell customers to rest easy? Right. Does it say trust us with your data, your business? All right. You're in, let me make it very clear to every MSP listening. You're in the security business. There's no way you're not. Okay. There's no way you say, well, we're in it, but we just offer, antivirus and malware stuff and that. No. You're in it. Okay. You've stepped in the ring with Mike Tyson. You're not gonna say, well, I'm gonna jab him and see where things go. No, you're in the fight. Okay. And I think that if something were to happen, right? If I come to you as a customer, I say, well, yeah, you're telling me to rest easy. So I trust you. I'm bringing you aboard. Right. Now you're not offering me awareness training. Okay, fine. And then something happens. Right, that could have been avoided, and we could talk about real cases in which I've handled, in which things have happened, and you say, well, why wasn't my staff trained for this? And you, the MSP that told me to trust you, right, to rest easy. Oh, there are security awareness training solutions out there. We didn't implement it for you. Really? I think you're in a bit of a bind at that point. Okay.
Or even worse, when you're an MSP and you talk to your clients about it, but maybe you're positioning or you're not strong at selling, or because I know that my MSP CEO, he'd be like, oh, we got this new shiny technology thing. You want to buy it? And clients be like, no, what, are you crazy?
Agreed. I mean, you have now the federal government, Health and Human Services, actually mandates 100% of its personnel to have security awareness training. You have state law that says that in handling customer information, personal information, that you have to have reasonable measures in place, including security training. About half the states now require something similar to that. And now you're going to tell me that you didn't offer me that, even though you knew it existed, even though that it's out there. Right. Whose side do you want to be on? And that's what we're here to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as we proceed through this webinar, if you have any questions, please submit them into the chat and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. We have gone out and we had put a posting out yesterday requesting some MSPs to send any questions to us. And we do have a whole bunch of questions that have come up, and maybe more questions that Brad even, knows about. We, might be scaring him here a little bit, but no, Brad's good.
Pay attention now, because if you come back to Brad and ask him these questions, he's going to charge you. What's your regular rate?
Yes.
$4.75 an hour.
There you go.
There you go.
You're saving money by asking now.
Valuable free information.
Now's the time to ask.
Now's the time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So Amelia, let's kick off with one of the questions that came up.
Yeah, absolutely. Although before we do that, I have one bad lawyer joke I'm going to tell. I can't help myself.
Go for it.
All right. So, what did the lawyer name his daughter? Sue.
Wow.
Wow.
Hold on, I'm gonna get a conference going with my therapist now. Hearing that was so bad, I don't even know where to go with it. So
I literally had to Google the worst lawyer joke ever, and that's what came up. So
that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
The solutions that you offer are far better than your jokes.
Thank you for that.
Segue.
Yeah,
see, this is what we call a segue.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
You are a leader in your field.
Segue.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So first question. So as an MSP, we change our services product slightly every year to adapt to changes in the market. Right. How should an MSP structure our agreements so that they don't have to be completely rewritten every year, or should they be?
All right. So I have had this, I have made this suggestion to MSPs literally across the nation for the past year or so. I think I'm going to begin by saying this. I'm going to answer your question by saying this. The most belligerent, expensive, and just hard-hitting, gut-wrenching arguments between MSPs and their customers do not relate to a failure to provide a service that they paid for. In other words, I paid for BDR service, you didn't give it to me. I paid for awareness, you didn't give it to me. That's not where it is. It's due to mismanaged expectations. That's what it is, mismanaged expectations. As long as you manage your client's expectations, 99% of the time you're going to avoid problems. So if you are changing services from time to time and updating your services, you have to have a way to manage your customers' expectations and let them know, right? Let them know. There is no lawyer can say to you, you must write it in your MSA, you must write it this way. No, anyone who's doing that is trying to sell you an agreement. Instead, what you need to do is you need to figure out the best way to convey this to your customers, manage their expectations for changes in the services. I suggest that every MSP have the equivalent of a user manual. The equivalent of a user manual. If you have a television and you need to know how to work this thing, you look in the user manual, right? How do I hook it to the sound bar? How do I get the universal remote going? User manual. All the services that you're providing as an MSP should be described in a document, a user guide, a service guide. And I believe that that guide should be posted. You could post it on like a SharePoint type site so nobody can stumble on it and steal how you're doing things. And if your customers want to know what you're doing and how you're doing it, direct them to the service guide. We're going to provide you a security stack. Here's how we're going to do it. Boom, 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 boom. And you don't even have to be vendor specific, right? You don't have to say we are offering you the ID Agent Bullfish solution. You could say we're offering you and then rattle off everything that Bullfish offers. Beautiful. And if your MSA is written correctly, it should say that from time to time, we're going to change that service guide. And unless it diminishes, unless it really hurts a feature or function that we were giving you, we're allowed to do that. And, you know, that's how it is. And we're just going to implement the change. That is the procedure that every MSP should be following: a service guide, an MSA that says we can change that guide as we need to accommodate changes in the industry. And unless it diminishes a service we're providing to you, just keep checking the user guide. We'll update that from time to time. That's how they should be doing it.
Now, that's something that would be after the sale has closed, right? After they've been brought on as a new client. Because one of the things that a lot of MSPs hear is you don't want to, when you're in the sales process and you're engaging with the prospect, the last thing you want to do is have this laundry list, right? Because then they're going to line out of it and be like, oh, do we really need that? Are you sure we need that?
So what you're bringing up is a process of how an agreement is pushed through to a client and how it is signed. I think that you have two goals. You have to lower the bar of entry, make it easy for them to accept the MSA, easy for them to take your quote, right? At the same time, manage their expectations. So what I always suggest, with very few exceptions, is first, you post that MSA. You post it on your website, right? Post it so it's there. It is service agnostic. Doesn't have services. It's just talking about the ground rules of how you do things. Then you have a quote, right? The quote is going to be sort of like the receipt of what you're going to get and how much and so forth. It doesn't have to be complicated, because that's the thing that the client's going to look at and they're going to say, okay, we're getting this and this and this. Now, to manage their expectations, you should have a service guide, right? And now think about that. In the way I'm suggesting it, you would have a quote that would begin with, this quote is governed under the MSA located here. The services in this quote, well, if you want to read about them, they're defined and governed under our service guide over here, if you want to read it, okay?
Right.
By accepting this quote, you accept this and that. All right, now let me tell you what we're going to give you. Boom, boom, boom. And at that point, you've lowered the bar of entry because they've accepted the MSA, because you've pointed it out to them before they sign in a clear and unequivocal way that it's governing. They've accepted your description of services. They could read all about it anytime, right? But they might not want to read it, or they might not want a 60-page quote, right? So you have that and this, and now you can do an efficient quote that's just talking about what you're going to give them. That's the procedure I think every MSP should follow.
On that note, Joshua had posted a question or a comment here. He said that it is part of our welcome mat service, our onboarding going forward, and has been part of our service guide since 2010. I don't know if 4 have read it in that time though. So
Right.
does it really matter if they've read it?
Nope.
Great question.
If you're going to, I mean, a straightforward question, it's a straightforward answer. No, it doesn't matter if they've read it. What matters is that they're aware of it at a time and a place where a reasonable person would expect to be made aware of it. So in other words, where MSPs run into problems is they post things and so forth. They have customers sign it. And then below the signature block in like gray typeface on a white background, it says, by the way, by accepting this, you accept. No, a reasonable person might have missed that, or they have that disclaimer or that incorporation by reference kind of thing on a different page altogether. Like you sign and then 3 pages later you talk about it. That's where you run into problems. But if you say to somebody, listen, before you sign this quote, this governs and this describes. And if you have problems, with that accessing it or you have questions, don't sign. Instead, call us. Call Amelia. She would love to talk to you. Okay, here's what we're going to give you. Boom, boom, boom. Sign. Do I care if they read it? Does Microsoft care if you read the EULA, right? For any of their products? I mean, pick a vendor. No, it's fully enforceable. The whether they read it or not is not the question.
Right. Excellent. So I'm going to jump to, well, actually, we'll
By the way,
over the first
a
one.
good start, Maurice. That's
Yes.
the lawyer joke, right? What do you call 100 lawyers chained together at the bottom and see a good start? Wow, that goes back to like when I was in law school. All right.
There you go. So the next one here, next question we have, this is from Maury. It says, when the presenters talk about offering phishing services to lower liability, do you mean including the service in our bundled price or just a good sales push integrated with our business reviews and dashboards?
I'm not sure I followed that. One more time.
Yeah, so when the presenters talk about our phishing services to lower liability, do they mean including that service? So like security awareness training, do we need to include that in our bundled price, or just a good sales pitch integrated with our business reviews and dashboards? So I think and Maury, if you want to clarify too, I think what Maury is asking is, do we have to, is the only way around this is making sure that we include it, or if we're offering it as an optional or as an option?
Well, I think, and while he's maybe clarifying it, I have heard something that has been tossed around at industry events and all. I've been asked about it. Maybe this is where he's going with it. The question I've been asked is it important to line item or separately invoice security services as opposed to just including them in an overall bundle and so on? The idea being that if they're line itemed, the customer is either aware of them or declines them specifically, whereas otherwise it might be sort of thrown into the mix. And from my perspective, I'm going to go back to the original thing I said. Mismanaged expectations cause the worst kind of the most expensive disputes. Expensive, 7-figure amounts. I mean, that's what we're talking. We're not talking about, oh, it cost me $5,000. No, it could cost you $100,000, $500,000, $1 million. I mean, that's what these disputes could result in. And so my thought is, I don't care if you line item them, and I don't care if you throw them in together. Manage your customers' expectations. So if they're getting them, they know they're getting them. And if they've declined them, which is a whole other topic we could talk about, when a service is declined, make sure the customer knows what they've declined and why it was important that they have it, and the fact that they're not going to get it in the future unless you agree to do it in writing in the future.
So I want to kind of piggyback on the question of including it. So what if we offer security awareness training, but as we all know, and we can clearly see this through a portal, if the end users don't actually participate, don't actually fulfill what we're providing.
Right.
So we provide, we have security awareness training available to them, but they don't do it. So are we I mean, as long as we've offered it and we have it available to them.
If your service is
that
limited
what's
to
needed?
offering, then it's limited to offering. You know, how the employer, the customer implements it or forces its implementation is going to be up to that, unless the MSP took on that responsibility in the contract.
Sure.
But I don't know why an MSP would ever do that, right? Why would you ever do that? But I do think that the value of security awareness training is so overlooked by MSPs. You know, I think that it's almost now going to be a staple of what every MSP should be offering. I have handled lots of cases just within the past year or so, 9, 10, most of which could have been avoided with a proper security awareness program. And it's just, I think that when you ask the MSP, why didn't you offer that? Like, why didn't you offer that to your customer? Well, the customer didn't go for it. They think it's going to be a pain in the butt and whatever it is. Then, you know, my thought usually is I look at the MSP and I think you didn't sell it properly. You didn't sell it properly.
Gotcha.
Because it's so foundationally important that if a customer doesn't buy it, it's almost like oxygen. No, they didn't want so much oxygen. What? Then you didn't explain the whole respiration thing, right? I mean, because it makes no sense to me. So,
very good. And the question that Maurice had, the clarification was exactly what he was going after. And then there's another one here from Erlis. Should the service guide include expected SOPs, standard operating procedures, as well?
yeah, anything that is standard that's going to be provided is in your user manual, right? Now, you might have different SOPs for different levels of service. You might have a gold plan, a silver plan, bronze plan, right? For $1,000 a month, you can call me during business hours, right? For $100,000 a month, you have my cell number, my mother's cell number, my brother's cell number. You have whatever, right? You might have different.
My front door, my house.
Oh yeah, it's all yours.
Right.
Here's my MAC address on my computer. I'll give it all to you.
Yes.
The point is that your user manual could address that. Right. Remember, Samsung, Sony, pick your TV, your favorite. They don't change their manual for the type of TV that you bought. Right? What do they say? They say, if you bought the model 6000 series, you get this. If you bought 7000, you get this. Well, I like that. Do I get that? I don't know. What does the quote say? What does your receipt say? Right? Well, I got model 6000. Here are the features. The same. The quote can say, you're purchasing our gold plan. What the hell's a gold plan? Look in the service guide. Service guide. If you bought our gold plan, thank you so much. It's our best plan. Okay. And here's what we're going to do for you. Boom, boom, boom. That's how it should go.
Excellent. All right, we got Avner. Hope I'm saying that correctly. Avner, where do you start with a good MSA in legal documents?
It's a great question. And also maybe to piggyback off that would be how often should MSPs have their MSAs contracts reviewed by a lawyer? All the time, right? Every day.
Yeah.
Every few minutes. I think that's appropriate. Every few minutes. Look, you know, it's the short answer is, where do you start? You call a lawyer like me or any other lawyer that's competent in practices in this area. That's where you can start. A lot of people say, well, what if I get model templates online? I could, you know, Frankenstein things together and all. My perspective is that it's okay to go online and look around for templates and models and so on. It's okay, because they teach you things that you don't know what you don't know, right? And these things might get you thinking in terms of what liabilities are out there and so on. So I don't have a problem. You want to read model templates and from different toolkits and so forth, great. But before you implement them, realize that they are not always going to work for you, that they are not necessarily geared for the MSP industry that, you know, as you see it, and they need to be modified, right? I mean, the example I always give, or I've given on the road lately is, you know, you raise a hand and say, okay, there are services that you provide, right? Yeah, everyone provides services. And then there are services you facilitate. And the people look at you and say, huh, that's right. Right. There are some services you provide directly, then there are others that you facilitate.
Sure.
And your agreement should really have the customer understand that and acknowledge that there are certain things that you can warranty and guarantee. And then there are other things that you just simply say, we're bringing you a top shelf provider, right? We're bringing you a Kaseya, we're bringing you a top shelf
Right.
provider. That's their solution. But they're not going to guarantee Kaseya, and Kaseya doesn't want to guarantee, they can hold their own, right? So the idea is that an MSA might want to distinguish between things you provide, things you facilitate. That's not stuff you find in model agreements. That said, if you have a model that gets you thinking about these things, more power to you.
Well, the scary thing is when you talk about Frankensteining it, pulling these two things together. I mean, you're grabbing some, well, first off, there could be different state, different jurisdictions that are coming into play, but also are you taking one thing, pulling it into another thing, and they contradict each other?
Yeah.
And that language is just completely different. And ultimately,
Yeah, well, you see it a lot. You see MSPs in trying to cover themselves and think more is better. They'll have an MSA, then they'll have terms and conditions, right? A different document, and then they'll actually put terms and conditions in the quote. So you have different terms in different documents. Sometimes they conflict with each other. And if all of that goes awry, that's held against the MSP, not the customer. That's contract law. It's held against the MSP. So the idea is you really need to have one constitution. That's your MSA. Everything else is a quote. You want to manage expectations, put it in a service guide.
Excellent.
Now, should MSPs, if they are, say, for example, they've historically worked in like a niche industry, and now they are branching out and engaging with different industries, would that be a reason to engage with the lawyer to review the MSA to make sure that there isn't any compliance
100%.
requirements or what have you?
100%. When you start engaging in different verticals, the game changes, right? If you're dealing with largely, if your vertical is educational institutions, K through 12 or something, that's what your providers for. Great. You have one set of requirements that your customers will require. Great. Now you say, now we're going to work with dental offices. Now you've just moved into the world of HIPAA. Oh, we're going to work with banks. Now you've moved into Graham Leach Bliley, FINRA, all kinds of. So for sure, if you have specific verticals, those should be reviewed with counsel to make sure that you're covering yourself for the requirements of those verticals.
And would that also apply to if you are doing commits, co-managed IT services?
Oh, well, co-managed IT
Great
brings up
question.
a whole other thing, right? Whenever
Right.
you're in a co-managed situation, the game is very different, right? Because everyone has keys to the castle. And so you will have questions that will come up, not only related to overlaps, right? When a provider is trying to provide a service and it overlaps with in-house, now what? Whose solution gets implemented? Whose decision do you follow? If one side says, all right, we'll follow your decision, have they breached the duty to the customer? Right? If something happens in a co-managed environment where everyone has root access or admin access, who can you blame? Everyone says, I didn't do it. Now what? So there are all of these types of issues that need to be addressed. And yes, Amelia, you're 100% right. They go in the MSA. 100%.
Excellent.
Okay.
Neil, you want to grab another one of the questions?
Absolutely. So speaking of MSAs, what should MSPs do if a client disagrees with what's in the MSA or the contract? Pick one.
How much are they paying you, I guess, right? I don't want that, but I'm going to give you 50 grand a month. Well, I don't like that clause either. I never liked it.
Right.
No, what you should try to implement, the process that you should try to do. And I know where law and business meet, it is not a perfect fit. There's always some daylight between where they connect. Your MSA should be your constitution. That does not change. And you say, well, what if we have to change it? Answer, you change it in the quote. That's what you try to do. You change it in the quote, because the quote is going to be that latest iteration, that latest understanding between you and your client. And if you're willing to do something differently for those circumstances, then the quote should say, for the purposes of the services under this quote, we agree to the following, whatever it is. It might be different than the MSA. If your MSA is written correctly, your quote will govern over the MSA. So you try to make those changes in the quote. Now, why is that crucial that you try to do it in the quote? Answer, because if you change your MSA, then everything you do after that dependent on that modified MSA. And you know, what we see after a while is an MSP will change an MSA once, twice, another year or two, change it again, change it again. By the time they're done, it's like the game of telephone. The MSA doesn't look anything like it should have, looked like, but you've modified it just slightly over the years that now things are awry. So I would say put changes in the quote. Try not to change the MSA.
So Maurice actually just threw out a question here related to that. Should the quote be a separate document?
Yes. Yeah, it should be
There
a
we
separate
go.
document. It should not be attached to the MSA. It's not a schedule. It's not an exhibit. It's not an exhibit to a schedule. It is a separate standalone narrative of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Okay. The legal and reality of all that, that's MSA. Oh, you want to learn more about it? That's my service guide. So yes, it's a standalone document for sure.
Would that then also
Excellent.
apply to like compliance-driven clients? Should there be a separate contract in place to define and address specific regulatory risks?
Well, so I think that when you're coming down to regulatory issues and compliance issues, MSPs have to wade carefully into those waters. And I think that should be a separate quote that you should have set up about compliance related services. And then if you're following my advice in your service guide, you should have a section about compliance related services. I think that if you're going to offer a compliance related solution that includes things like security awareness training and so forth, you brand it, give it a name, whatever name it is, right? The Brad Gross Security Complete Care Solution. Great. Then in your services guide, you have a whole section, the Brad Gross Security Compliance Solution. If you've chosen this, wonderful. Here's how we're going to do it. Boom, 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 and lay it out. That's how you could do it.
So let me ask this. We're talking about, let's say you have different packages. You have 3 different levels. Should those 3 different levels be different based on the type of maybe security products or type of your security stack that you're offering? Or, where they're, like each one could have like good, better, best. You have like higher level security, packages. Or should it be more so that they all have the same type of security? Your security stack's the same for all, but maybe the level of service where one's on-site included, one's remote only, where you're distinguishing like more the service. Because does that put you in a position where someone chose to go with the lower package and it doesn't include everything that's in your platinum package?
Yeah. So I'll tell you this. I think, and it's funny because as you're talking, I hear Gary Pica in my head telling me, man, Gary is he's the guru right behind all of this stuff. So, giving a shout out to him. I think that there are certain things that you should be having in your security packages that, like I said, it's my position that it's foundational, right? It's foundational, right? If you want me to clean your house, I need access to your front door. That's in every package. Now, I'll clean 6 rooms, 5 rooms, 2 rooms. I need access to your door. That's foundational. Things like certain services like security awareness training should be foundational. Well, it drives up the cost, right? Drives up the cost, but it protects you as an MSP from a customer turning around and saying, why didn't you suggest this to me? And you're going to see more of that. I'm telling you, you're going to see more of that. It protects the customer itself. And I think that if something happens, the customer is really going to look back and appreciate the fact that you had this as like a foundational requirement. Right? Cars used to charge you for GPS. Now every car has GPS standard, right? Why? Because it's like foundational. It's like who doesn't have that, right? That's what I think certain issues like training and so forth should be. And if you want to put that in a service guide, right? And you want to have different levels, you want to have gold, silver, platinum. I think that there are certain things that should be uniform, and then you can add from there. And I think that you try to make it. What is it? The popcorn in movie theaters? You could get something this big for like $5, this big for like $5.50, or this big for $6.50. It's like, well, what? Why would I get something this big? Another $1, I get this. That's how I think that you need to market. That's a Pica. Now I'm wading into Pica territory.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's how it should be. Mhm.
So David is looking for some clarification on, he indicates, so that I understand, a quote is the same as an SOW.
A quote would replace the statement. A statement of work, okay, is historically, a statement of work is a description of what you're going to do, how much you're going to do it, right? And a description of the service. What I have found and that's fine, right? But what I have found over the years is that there are more and more solutions that are becoming foundational that you need, and customers are implementing them and they require more explanation. So the problem is that we were seeing statements of work that were like 50 pages long, right? Or quotes that were 50. So what I recommend now is the statement of work is now replaced with a quote and a service guide. That way you could explain whatever you want in the service guide, make it 500 pages, who cares? It's a service guide. They'll look up what they need to look up, and you've eliminated the need for a statement of work to just getting a quote. That's what I think.
Excellent. Emil, you want to tee up the next question?
Yeah, all right. So what's the next one here? Why doesn't a boilerplate agreement MSA provided by someone else in the industry work for an MSP? And this might have been already discussed a little or not. I mean,
yeah, a little bit. I mean, like I said, boilerplate agreements are always good to get you thinking about things, but there are so many realities, right? Look, we provide we'll provide a solution, let's say a bullfish solution, okay, to a customer. So MSP provides a bullfish solution, and that helps them get compliant. But the customer, of course, thinks, oh, I'm compliant. Well, why? Well, the MSP said the bullfish makes me compliant, or that's a compliance solution. No. That is one part of a larger compliance requirement, right? But it's one important part, but it's a part. Customer thinks they're compliant. So in my world, one of the realities that an MSA should talk about is the fact that if we're giving you a compliance solution, unless we say otherwise explicitly, what we're giving you is a piece of the puzzle. We're giving you a part. Don't rely on that as your total compliance solution. Don't rely on it for full regulatory compliance. Talk to us about those issues, but what we're going to give you is a piece of the puzzle. That is something you don't find in a boilerplate agreement, but that's important, right? So boilerplate agreements, good basic foundational education, not something you want to rely on.
Excellent. And John has thrown out a couple questions here. Customer refuses security awareness training, ID agent scans, disaster recovery, etc. Does the letter of indemnification suffice to protect the MSP?
No, I hate that. And here's why. Here's why I hate it. And I did this demonstration recently on stage. I don't know if Amelia saw it, so this might be. She's like, oh, I know what he's going to do. Here's the thing. These indemnity and the waivers and listen, if your MSA is written correctly, it should say, we are only responsible to give you what's in a quote. If it ain't in the quote, you ain't getting it. Okay. That's what an MSA says clearly. The quote should say, you're only getting what's here. If it's not listed here, you don't get it. So if a customer declines a service, it doesn't appear in the quote. If it's not in the quote, then you're not responsible. That's what the MSA says. Now, why not also send a waiver? Here's my demonstration. I love this demonstration with a pen. That's it. Magic. Here we go. Demonstration.
Magic show.
Magic show. Ready? Ah, which hand is it? Okay. Now,
razzle dazzle, look over here.
That's it. So, yeah, you got me with the razzle dazzle. You threw me. Okay, here we go. Here's my demonstration. I have a pen. Hypothetical one. I'm putting you guys on notice. I'm about to drop this pen on the desk. I'm just letting you know. You might hear a sound. I'm dropping it on the desk. I'm letting you know. Okay. There. That's demonstration one. Demonstration two. I'm letting you guys know I'm going to drop this pen on the desk. Before I drop this pen, I want to start a recording. I'm going to record this, and I want Amelia to say after me that she is going to hold me harmless from and against any and all claims, causes of action, attorney's fees, reasonable attorney's fees, from any damages that might occur, known or unknown, now or in the future, for me dropping this pen. Now, would Amelia do that? No. If she did, that would be nuts. And why should she? Why, and if you're Amelia, why would you ever sign that waiver? But the more foundational question is, why am I asking her to? She can't stop me from dropping this pen. I don't have any, contract with her that says I can't drop a pen. I can drop a pen whenever I want. But what I've done in the second example is I've given her control. She's now sitting there thinking, maybe I can stop him from dropping a pen. Maybe if he drops the pen and it hurts my ear, I can sue him. I've created a solution for a problem that never existed, all because I asked her to basically sign off on something that she's not entitled to tell me what to do anyway, right? So moving it back to a declined service like MFA, security awareness training, and so forth, if it's declined, it won't be in the quote, which means they're not entitled to it. I don't want you sending a notice saying, you agree that you're going to hold us harmless when we don't provide you a service that we're not required to provide you in the first place. Okay, sign. Right. What happens if the customer doesn't sign it? Now what? Now, if something goes wrong, customer's going to try and say, yeah, I didn't sign it because I thought I was getting that service. Now what? No. A declination notice should be just that, a notice. Notice doesn't have a signature block. It's a notice. Amelia, you have turned down my MFA service. MFA is a secondary line of defense, very important to protect direct vectors from mobile devices into your network. By failing to take my MFA service, your network is vulnerable to that type of attack. I'm not going to provide that to you in the future, unless I agree to do so in the future. I'm not going to provide it to you unless I agree to do so in the future. And if you need it in the future, additional costs might be incurred, especially if it's an emergency situation. Thank you. That's it.
Excellent.
That's a notice. Don't ask for waivers. Your MSA is already, if it's written correctly, already covers you. Don't inject ambiguity into the situation. That's what I think. That's my demonstration with the pen.
All right.
I like the magic show.
You were amazed.
Yeah.
You laughed, you cried. I know.
Yeah.
All right. I got a couple more here. Okay. So kind of switching topics, but related, right? So do you recommend MSPs fill out cyber insurance applications, assessments on behalf of their clients, or should they refuse to? Can an MSA contract protect them in these instances for providing recommendation, attestation on these types of applications?
So I think that I don't have a problem with MSPs filling out those check boxes. I say, do you have this service? Do you, yes, no, whatever. I don't have a problem with MSPs filling it out as long as they understand what they are answering, right? For example, an MSP that is providing and or facilitating some sort of anti-malware solution, if the question is there an anti-malware solution in place that is being provided or facilitated, you could check off yes, okay. Are employees properly trained in all potential avenues of malware and so forth? MSP shouldn't answer that question. You're not. That goes back to we were talking about it earlier about implementation, right? Like, does an MSP get involved in implementation? Don't answer questions about things that are outside of your knowledge or control. So if they're asking, is it implemented, to all employees? I wouldn't answer that question if I were you, right? Are you providing a solution that does A, B, and C? Yeah, we are. We're providing that solution. Is it being implemented? If there is a breach, how is it being reported? If the MSP is not in charge of any of that, then they should decline to answer those questions. Sometimes MSPs in their zeal, again, to look like the good guy, they'll just answer things. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't be the good guy. Be the smart guy.
Love it. What was the other question that you had, Amelia?
Yep, one more. Okay, so with the developments around classifications of acts of war, with cybercrime, threat actors, do you see any new or emerging risk MSPs should be aware of to their, existing MSAs or contracts, right? So if all, for example, if all cyber incidences become, effectively acts of war, how does that change an MSP's risk profile, both in contracts with clients and those with current vendors?
So similar to what I was saying earlier, that I don't think that MSPs should, in their service guide or their description, lock themselves into any particular, like saying who the vendor is. Instead, they should list the services that that vendor offers, right? List the services. There's no reason to lock in with a name. I think that when it comes to cyber risk and so forth, and now some are deemed acts of war, terrorism, and so forth, I think that MSPs need to sweep with a broad brush in their MSAs and not distinguish between whether malware is an act of war, an act of terrorism, and this, and that, and so on. I think you have to just sweep with a broad brush and basically talk about any cybersecurity incident, any malware incident, any, whether it's an act of war, terrorism, causes labor disputes, shortages, and so, you know, the problem is if you try to address every way that these things are categorized, you're going to miss something. So I would sweep as broadly as possible and not necessarily be concerned with the fact that some things are acts of war, some things are acts of terrorism, and so on. Sweep as broadly as possible and talk about all malware. You could say, by way of example, the quote act of war, you know, domestic terrorism, whatever it is, but sweep broadly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Actually, a question that came up, and before we jump into jump over to learn a little bit more about security awareness training. Lonnie is asking about, maybe it's coming at the end of the webinar, but does Brad offer packages like MSA quotes, SOWs, and so on for MSPs?
Do I offer packages? So yes. I mean, you know, usually when an MSP requires one thing, they require several things, right? They'll require an MSA, they might require a service guide, they might require independent contractor agreements and so forth. There are certain what I'll call foundational documents that I think every MSP should have. MSA is one, service guide is another, independent contractor, employee agreement, and so on. So yeah, if you send me an email there, be happy to talk to you about it. Absolutely.
Excellent. And I did include in the chat for everybody, included all of Brad's contact information there. So and one other quick question before we move over here is comes from Maurice. What are your thoughts that even if you provide training to the entire company and their employees do not follow it, the cyber crook penetrates the network via social engineering?
Yeah. What are my thoughts? Even if you provide training to the company and their employer and their employees don't follow it. So in other words, I think what he's asking is you provide the solution. The customer doesn't implement it properly or doesn't enforce it, then what? Again, the MSA, if it's written correctly, your liability ends at the stuff that you have to provide. So if you have provided it, if you're saying, listen, it's our duty to sell you these licenses and make sure the licenses are working and so forth for a period of time, that's where your liability ends. Whether the employer is going to implement it or not is really not your concern. I think that the only time that the MSP would be liable is if they've taken on the responsibility of actually ensuring that employees are using this stuff. And again, I'm not sure why an MSP would do that. Usually when you sell any solution like an ID agent, you're going to say, look, we provide you, our customer, with tools so you can see if it's being implemented, right? So you can follow up with people who aren't doing what, you know, doing the training and so forth. But the MSP is not going to take on that liability and shouldn't.
Excellent. All right. And, you know, with that being said, there's a lot of things that we can do, should do in our businesses. We've been providing in my MSP security awareness training, dark web monitoring for quite a few years now. And there's not enough time to talk about all the stories and amazing, crazy stories of things that we have found, or the type of things that, you know, it's helped to protect. But I will say that, you know, they're very grateful for the type of training, the security awareness training, because I mean, ultimately, we're putting this machine in front of them, this computer that can do serious damage. It's like a vehicle. It can do incredible damage, like driving into a crowd of people, right? Or it could, you know, you could be doing something that, you know, you don't know, you know, what you're doing, and you click on something and you're not thinking about it. And we need to help educate them before we put them in front of this vehicle. Just like, I guess relating it to when my son went through driver's ed, I mean, if he never went through driver's education and got behind a wheel, it could be extremely dangerous, and our clients are putting their employees behind this computer, this vehicle, and it can be extremely dangerous. And there are tools such as what ID Agent has available with Bullfish. And Amelia, I'd love to have you tell us a little bit more about that service and how it can help our clients, to help us.
Yeah, absolutely. In the last 4 minutes that we got here, love to. So kind of in a nutshell, Bullfish ID it's two-pronged, right? It's phishing simulation testing and security awareness training. And when we first came out with Bullfish ID, I don't know if those of you on the call are familiar, but ID Agent, it was dark web monitoring. We were the first dark web monitoring the channel. Then we added Bullfish ID as our security awareness training, phishing simulation. And it was kind of just a value add. And that was several years ago. And we've really done a lot to enhance it and make it easier for an MSP to use and manage and roll out, make it as automated as possible, but still adding content and adding capabilities and customization and different features so that an MSP can tailor it to specific business needs, specific customer needs, right? So we've got phishing campaigns. Really, Bullfish ID contains all of the tools that an MSP needs to run great training programs and phishing campaigns and testing, and you can provide the reporting on the back end for that. So wide variety of plug and play phishing simulations. We add new phishing kits every month. But our training content goes beyond just the anti-phishing topics, right? We've got training courses that cover other important security and business topics like password security, physical security, and other various compliance and data privacy topics such as GDPR, HIPAA, PCI, DSS, right? So in the platform, we've got 60 plus easy to understand, short and visually engaging training videos that are available in over 8 languages. And we add new ones regularly. But you also have the option to create, customize, right? You can upload your own training content. You can tweak existing phishing emails and landing pages. You can create your own, make it specific to your client's industry or their company or their country. Same thing with the training, right? So you can customize our existing training, or you can create your own, upload trainings from other platforms. Like, so for example, if you wanted to create like a new employee training, right? Or mandatory safety training, or how to set up your SharePoint folders, like any of those, right? So it really can function as an LMS, a learning management system. Campaign management is easy. You can schedule out campaigns for the entire year if you want. You can, our solution is integrated with Azure Active Directory and Google Directory, which allows you to create, import, edit target employee groups for phishing and training campaigns. And you can run different campaigns for multiple groups, right? So these could be different departments, think sales or HR or finance or the lawyer group, the legal group. Those guys need a lot of training, I'm sure.
So much. I have no idea. So much.
Right. So if you think different office locations, different departments, right? And so having that ability to create a campaign and get it out for the entire year saves a lot of time, a lot of your text time. And you can easily duplicate and edit current or past campaigns to avoid building new campaigns from scratch every single time. The training portal, this is one of our newest features. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback on that. The training portal, this is what the client experience looks like. It's personalized to each end user. They will receive an email that will have their assigned trainings. They can log into the portal at their convenience. You can white label it for you, the MSP. They'll see their completed courses that will display their expired courses. And these are the courses that were assigned to them, but they haven't taken them. And having the ability to put your logo on it or your customer's logo. And kind of expanding on those branding capabilities that are available to you. We added some new features as well. You can customize the user login page with your logo. You can customize the URL of the training login page to keep your MSP name front and center. And finally, you can customize the contact support link. So user support requests come directly to you, the MSP, as they should instead of us. So a great feature there. And then as a campaign administrator, the dashboard helps you keep track of your ongoing and scheduled campaigns in aggregate and for each individual group. Now, after each campaign ends, you can generate a PDF or download as a CSV to share with your client's leadership, right? The internal stakeholders. The report is going to detail who received the emails, who opened them, who submitted credentials. And we are currently in the process, we're currently in the process of making this dashboard a little bit prettier, a little bit easier to read and understand. But I mean, you got it. Really, it's to give a quick snapshot of the campaign results, right? So we recommend creating benchmarks in your reporting to track and share employee progress with clients. And you can run initial campaign to get some baseline results. And then as you run additional campaigns and trainings, you can track improvements in how your clients' employees are interacting with the phishing emails, which really helps to demonstrate the value of the training to your clients and in your QBRs or TBRs or MTRs or whatever cadence.
It also meets regulatory compliance requirements as well. So that's
Thank you. And it can also help you upsell and cross-sell, right? Identify those problem children, the individuals that need a little bit more hand-holding and help, right? Before it becomes a big problem. And then, fingers get pointed at you, the MSP. So we put the poll up. If you're interested in learning more, really 4 reasons you need Bullfish ID: automated, easy to manage, engaging, up-to-date content that's short, so you're keeping the end user productivity up as much as possible. Important, you can empower your clients' employees to fortify that human firewall, so they are an asset and not a liability. And then it costs less compared to many solutions in the market. So in a nutshell, Bullfish ID it's a foundational, fundamental security control.
Awesome.
All right, so that was the poll question. Put that up. If there's anyone else that are still, deciding what they want to click on, I have a download resource. If you're interested, it's a guide, step-by-step guide that will give you expert tips and tricks on how to build a security awareness training program or enhance it if you already have one. So you can, the QR code there. We can also, in the follow-up, we can share that link. Dan, I'll get it to you if necessary, and then connect with me. So feedback, follow-up, anyone, if you want to reach out to me, we do have a referral program. So I know that there's probably a lot of Kaseya customers on this call, or at least some. And if you know of a colleague or someone that doesn't use any Kaseya products and is interested in Bullfish ID, reach out to me, aparo@idagent.com. And if there is not already an opportunity with your referral, we will register the lead to you and we will award you with a $200 bonus. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Yeah, definitely. And as you see on there, there's a special Everything MSP member pricing. So you definitely want to take advantage of that. I mean, we all like to save money, right?
It's 2 months free and 20% off, not or, it's and.
Nice. That's awesome. Thank you for offering that. We appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I hope everybody, I think we answered all the questions. I hope everybody has learned a lot here today from our expert panelists here, Brad and Amelia, and clearly a lot for us to take into consideration as MSP business owners, things that from a legal perspective that we certainly need to take, take another look at and make sure that we're covering all of our bases. You got contact information here for Amelia. You also have contact information for Brad as well. You can reach out to Brad for any kind of legal help on MSAs, SOWs, and so on. With that being said, I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank Amelia and Brad for being here today and offering all of your expert advice. And we will get the recording out within the next 24 hours. Thank
And
you,
if
everybody.
see us in person, we will be at the ASCII events. So if
Yes.
look online and look for the one that's in your area and come join us.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
everyone.
Thanks.